Welcome everyone to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, and today I'm going to be talking about Chucky Season 1 Episode 2, called Give Me Something Good to Eat. So full spoilers for the episode, as always. It's almost like the most boring thing I could possibly say about the episode, but it's kind of just on par with Episode 1. The same potential, the same things that are good are still there. It's doing a good job of making me hate certain characters, so I'm kind of, rubbing my hands together, like, yes, kill Lexi. Go on, Chucky, kill her, or whoever may end up killing her. In fact, my money's on the little sister now, to be honest. Little Caroline is my new favourite potential. But my new favourite thing about this show is Chucky forming a friendship with a little girl who is good at killing people in video games, and Chucky sees potential in her. There's something darkly ironic and heartwarming about the whole thing. It's kind of nice. Once again, the episode started with one of these weird little flashbacks to Charles Lee Ray's life. In this case, it was him knowingly biting into an apple with a blade in it, and smiling as blood poured out of his mouth. It feels kind of on point for Chucky, but that does come back up later in the episode, so it does set up kind of a gag later on. But we do get a kill in the opening scene. And one of the things about horror TV shows, or TV shows that are kind of spinning out from horror franchises, and this is something that ever since they've started trying to make these work with the Scream TV show, or what else was around that time? Haunting the Hill House obviously is one of the more successful ones, which wasn't a spin-off or anything like that, although it was based on something that had already been adapted. But particularly with these ones where you've got a killer, is like pacing out the kills, because typically these movies are 80-90 minutes, and instead we have 10 episodes to spread out the cast that we've set up for deaths. And we get a kill in the opening sequence here before the title, which, by the way, the title was made up of blades this time and not doll heads, so clearly that's something that's going to vary episode to episode, which is a nice little touch. But the housekeeper gets killed, and it's actually kind of a fun death. I enjoyed this one. It's a really simple thing. She's opened up the dishwasher, and there's a bunch of blades, knives and whatnot, sticking up in the dishwasher. And Chucky, although he denies it later on, of course, but I'm pretty convinced that Chucky did push her onto the knives. And it's very quick. It's not like a big, long, drawn-out death by any means, but there's a little bit of build-up of Chucky kind of watching her. A little bit of POV. It ends with the reflection of his face in the blade, which has been a big bit of imagery for the show in general, in terms of the posters and the marketing. And the episode even ends with a similar moment where his reflection's in the knife again. So it kind of bookends the episode thematically, which is a nice touch. So, good stuff. Fun kill. I was wondering if Chucky was going to hide the body and she would just be missing, or if this would turn into another, there's been another death around our main character Jake, surely this is going to be raising some suspicions. And sure enough, that is where we go with this, where she's not found till a bit later on. It's not until Jake and Junior, and I'm still learning the names here, so forgive me if it takes me a second as I'm saying them for the first time. Jake and Junior come home from school and find her. And it probably, it couldn't have been them. They were out at school the whole time. But what struck me about this is that so the main cop, of course, we're following is Devon's mum, whose name is Evan. His name is Devon Evans. What? Why did they think that was a good idea? Devon Evans? What? That's almost cruel, naming your kid Devon if your last name is Evans. Alright. But anyway, Detective Evans obviously is the main detective we're following, who's investigating the case, has a suspicions that there's something going on. Later even asks Devon some questions about Jake, which Devon kind of avoids a little bit and just sort of plays dumb. But her partner, or at least the guy who's there at the crime scene with her, has no chill and is so unprofessional. And it's not so much that he's been insensitive, although he is being insensitive, but that's not really the problem with it. It's more that the tactic you take, or that is taken when police are investigating something, doesn't tend to be just unload all of your theories onto people who are directly tied to who you suspect might be a killer. Like, I don't know, like everything about it just felt like this is horrible police work, on top of just being really insensitive if it's completely wrong, and you don't have to put these poor people through the trauma that their nephew or even possibly their son might be capable of murdering someone. But it is played with kind of a tinge of humor though at all times. And I think that's the important thing about this show, is that almost everything has a tinge of humor to it, even when it's dealing with very, very serious or very dark things or topics. And it gets a lot of these moments through a little bit better than they maybe otherwise would be. And that's not to say that every single scene like this works well. I thought, some of the stuff with what's their names, the adults here, Bree and Logan, like everything with them discussing the kids, it's just kind of whatever. Like I wasn't necessarily feeling much, especially when the kids start like overhearing parts of the conversation when they're upstairs and just kind of like trying to build the mystery. There was a lot of the early reviews that got access to more of the season before it premiered. A lot of them said it picked up either on or after episode 3. And I am comforted to hear that a little bit, because it's actually very solid in its build so far, but it is very much a drawn-out first act. If you're going to compare the season of this to a movie of Chucky, it does kind of feel like, so far, I feel like I'm still kind of in the first 10-15 minutes of the movie, in terms of like how much we're kind of advancing things. And in some ways that's good, because we're getting more time to build certain characters, we're getting more time to build the influence of Chucky on Jake, things like that. But at the same time, there's also kind of a little bit of we're also stalling before we get to proper chaos, before we get to, things from the movies properly appearing. I did note that I'm looking at the IMDb page, which I've just got up for the character names, but it does have Fiona Dourif credited here. I did not see her in this episode, so I think that's just a mistake in IMDb. But if she was like around somewhere in the background or something, then by all means let me know in the comments. I did not see her in this. And I know her from the last 2 movies, so I know what she looks like. But yeah, so I think I have to get one acting complaint out the way before we move on. There's a scene when they drop the kids off at school, and I think his name's Oliver, the sort of pompous kid who's throwing the party that a lot of the episode's going to revolve around. When he invites Jake to the party, I swear, and I don't mean to be mean, but every line that came out of this actor's mouth that plays Oliver was so forced and unnatural and stilted, and just like, it had that weird thing where every single sentence had this inflection where it's like, I feel like you're just trying to remember your script more than you're actually convincing me you believe any of what you're saying. And it's not like he's giving some dramatic scene. It's not like he's having to be emotional or set up big exposition or do anything that's actually arguably more of a challenge as an actor. All he's doing is saying, hey, condolences about your dad. Hey, I'm having a party later. You should come. That's effectively the entire contents of his dialogue. And every single word of it sounded so just strained and forced in that really bad actor way. It's kind of like some people, for whatever reason, when you put a camera pointed at them, they just don't know how to talk like a human being anymore. Like all of a sudden, the words just don't sound the same anymore. It's weird, but it's there, and it stuck out. And it's not a big part of the episode by any means, but it really stuck out to me in this scene. But yes, but it's all about this party. Lexi's going. A big part of Jake's plot this episode is that when Chucky disappears, seemingly to go off and find this party, Jake does actually want to stop any more killings, and obviously he blames Chucky for the death of the housekeeper, although Chucky tries to talk himself out of it and say, the accidents are more likely in serial killers, especially serial killers that are possessing dolls. Like, the math just adds up there, which actually did give us a big reference to Seed of Chucky in this scene. He talks about having a queer kid, and I'm not fond of Seed of Chucky. I kind of hate that movie. I think it's the worst Chucky movie. I think it's a very annoying movie. I think the voice in particular for the kid whose name I can't remember off the top of my head, but the kid in Seed of Chucky. I hate the voice like so much, and it felt like it was going so camp that I just was never into it. And Child's Play 3 is not that great, but I actually prefer it more to Seed of Chucky, and those two are definitely the weakest two of the franchise, I think. But that said, even with that opinion, I actually still kind of like this reference. One, because it plays into the themes where we're doing a lot of LGBT themes this season. It's a big part of the show with Jake's character and everything he's going through. But also because one of the things that really impressed me with the last Chucky movie, Cult of Chucky, in particular, although I think Curse of Chucky falls into this a little bit as well by the end, but I remember watching Curse of Chucky for the first time and thinking, oh, this is kind of a soft reboot where they're trying to take it back to a serious, more darker film. They're kind of trying to get away from what Seed and Bride of Chucky were. And what, to the point where I wasn't even sure if it was even in the same continuity. Part of me thought it might be doing it's only a sequel to the first film or the first couple of films or something like that. But by the end of the movie, it was kind of clear that, oh no, it's actually including all of the continuity, and there's the post-credit sequence kind of tied it into the first couple of films in a way that I never thought they would do. There was always kind of this divide in my head between Child's Play 1, 2, 3 and then Bride and Seed. I always thought that, yes, Child's Play 1, 2, 3 obviously is in the backstory to Bride and Seed and so on, but I always kind of felt like that once they moved to Bride of Chucky, it's like, oh, that's what Chucky is now, and we don't really want to go back to what those first Child's Play movies were. And Curse, and then definitely Cult. By the end of Cult, it is so celebratory and like inclusive of all of its continuity, where it brings multiple characters back from the original two films. It references everything along the way. But the one thing that I don't remember being referenced that much in Cult was maybe Seed, and it's actually kind of nice that even though I'm not that fond of the film, on the principle of Don Mancini making sure that everything is still relevant, everything's still valid. Nothing's been swept under the rug. All of it counted. When so many other horror franchises, have to restart, have to only count the original or whatever. And that's one of the reasons why I was excited about the continuation of the continuity in this show. So having Chucky just drop this reference here, and it's especially funny because if you've seen that movie, when Jake asks him the question, "Oh, so you're okay with your kid being gender fluid?" And Chucky responds, "I'm not a monster, Jake." That is a genuinely funny line for a couple of reasons. One, he's a killer. He's from the little flashbacks we're getting, it's looking like he was a complete creep right from an early age. But if you watch Seed of Chucky, he's actually like furious about the idea that that his kid might not be his son. Like there's a whole thing. It's been honest, I watched it now, but that was a big part of the movie, was him and Tiffany fighting about the kid, and the kid's gender. So this came off really funny to me that he was like trying to use this as a card to play and say, "Hey Jake, I'm on your side. I want to help you with the bullies. Let's go after that bitch Lexi. Let's do it." I don't know. I got a kick out of that. So I mean, it's still playing to its strengths a lot of the time, which I really appreciate. The only real complaint, and the reason why it feels slow, is that so much of it right now is kind of just setting up the teen characters and their drama. And I think Jake and Devin's kind of flirtation is very natural and kind of sweet. But a lot of the other stuff with I think everything with Junior's a little bit flat for me right now. He's just kind of this moody kid. And I know they're trying to set up that, his dad's trying to make him the big sports athlete guy. That was a weird sentence, you know what I mean? He's watching his protein intake, he's all of his dietary requirements. He's so proud that he's looking like an Olympian for Halloween and all the rest of it. So everything with him and his kind of mistrust of Jake and spying on Jake a little bit by looking at the computer, and it's actually Chucky who was looking up Lexi, but all of that stuff, I'm just a little bit it's whatever. It's I get why it's there. It's going to probably be important later. I don't necessarily find myself enjoying the scenes as they play out that much. They're just kind of fine at best. So it is what it is. But there's some great stuff in the episode, though, as we go further, that I do want to talk about. I mentioned Caroline earlier. I think the scene where we saw her last episode in the talent show. I think she was in the crowd, but she's drawing a picture of Chucky, and she's coloring it in, and she's got this, and it's a pretty good drawing, especially for a 6-year-old. And the parents come down. They're going to some Halloween party, and they tell they're talking to Lexi about her little sister's drawing, and maybe she can meet the doll. And Lexi's just awful. She's swearing. I mean, not that I didn't swear in front of my parents necessarily when I was of a certain age, but I wasn't swearing at them like a little shit. I wouldn't hold back if I was going to swear naturally anyway, but I wasn't intentionally revolting and having an attitude. That's the difference here. And she is awful about her little sister. She says the drawing's bad. And I actually really like this scene because Lexi's mum's like, you know what, daughter, shut up. She gets like real with her and says, your little sister's gifted, and she's better at this than you've been at anything in your entire life. That is a burn coming from your goddamn parent, and Lexi has earned it. And this is like right after as well. Lexi's tried to claim that Jake, by saying what he said in the talent show with Chucky, was bullying her, given that everything we've seen of her is just being a bully to everyone else. It's actually like, it's done a really good job of making her like your crown jewel of a victim, right? And that's, they tease it later on. Chucky's under the bed, he's trying to stab with the knife, and he doesn't quite get it. And you want it to happen, but they've made her so awful now at this point that they're going to make us wait. And maybe they'll try and pull off the impossible. Maybe they'll try and do some sort of redemption arc. Maybe they'll do something to change our minds. But at least right now, she is who you save for the finale to be killed in the most ridiculous, satisfying way possible. Now, admittedly, the plot may dictate that they can't wait that long, but right now, that's the way I feel about it. Is that's your carrot now that you dangle? Is the gruesome death of Lexi? That's the carrot you dangle. So, yeah, but everything with the Caroline, I think is great. In this scene, it's not necessarily her herself; it's more what she inspires out of her parents. With Lexi. But then there's a scene where she's playing video games with Chucky and talking about killing, and Chucky's just kind of casually saying, your mum doesn't like swearing. She's getting pretty far up my effing list. Which, I think I mentioned this last review. But this, as far as I know, because I'm watching the stream version of it, obviously. As far as I know, this is airing with the swearing intact. And this is something, because I remember, Mr. Robot, for example, was one that I know that when that aired on USA Network, they muted the F-bombs. And I never had that experience because I was watching the stream version. Prime, most of the time, once it sort of found a home there. So I never got that experience, but I knew that's what was going on. But I'm hearing from people, I know Tim mentioned it because he's watching the show as well, they're just straight up letting the F-bombs play on TV, and it's just kind of interesting to watch this shift happen in US cable TV, if that is a genuine kind of push that at least USA and Sci-Fi are kind of saying, we're okay with this now, we're just going to do it. Coming obviously from the UK, we just have the watershed, which means that after 9 p.m, every channel, if they want, can just drop F-bombs and show R-rated content. It's not R-rated here, obviously. It'll be a 15 or an 18 here, but that's how it goes. So, but the equivalent of an R rating is what I mean. So, it's interesting because this episode had a lot of F-bombs in it. Like Lexi was dropping them constantly. So that was just a bit. But it's just interesting to sort of know, and I don't really care. The only reason why it's remotely worth mentioning is because it happens to be airing where it's airing. That's the only reason. I mean, if this was just on a streaming service and that's all it was, or whatever, no one would care. It's just because of where it's airing. But it's just kind of interesting. It's more of like a TV meta interest than it is anything with the actual show itself. But if this sticks and more shows do this from now on, it'll be kind of neat to remember that the Chucky show is kind of one of the one of the pioneers of f-bombs on basic cable US TV, and it may not be the first. I'm sure like people are going to give me examples, but it's certainly the first that I have knowingly encountered that has happily been doing it. But by all means, correct me if there's other big examples recently. I know there's the occasional thing that will do it as a one-off, but this is a little bit different. This is just no. This is dropping f-bombs thick and fast, there's no tomorrow. It thinks it's on HBO. I'm sure there's still restrictions on nudity and stuff, but it like we've come a long way in terms of what it's allowed on US TV when it comes to violence and gore and stuff like that. Even network TV gets away with a lot more than it used to. I mean, Hannibal aired on network TV, and I wasn't a big fan of that show, honestly. I know people like it, but it wasn't for me. But it got away with a lot for NBC. Like that had some pretty gory looking stuff on it for NBC. So no, fun stuff. But yes. Anyway, so I like Chucky with the kid. I thought it was a very amusing scene. I also love Chucky with the mask on, pretending to be a trick or treater, giving the woman with the apple with the razor blade, and even and this is what I was talking about earlier with the dark humor kind of like enhancing things, and this is not one where it saves a scene that wouldn't work. This is one where it would have been fine on its own played straight, but it was actually like a really darkly funny scene when Detective Evans is talking to this woman and getting a description of Chucky. There's like a running thing throughout the scene that the woman is difficult to understand because she's bleeding from the mouth and constantly having to wipe the blood, and she's got like it's like she's bit her tongue almost, right? She's struggling to speak properly, and every time there's blood dripping down her chin, it's kind of funny, and it shouldn't be. It should be dark and kind of disturbing. It's a really nasty thing what's happened to her, but again, it's got that playful dark tone to the whole thing that it's just kind of the absurdity of her being mad at this red-headed child, and Detective Evans kind of like recognizing the description as the Chucky doll, and what does that mean exactly? So very, very curious to see how her investigation, and like, because presumably she's going to get to a point where she goes beyond suspecting the kids and maybe starts to look into further things, and maybe starts to even possibly accept the impossible. So interesting stuff. All that stuff's fun. Chucky trying to kill Lexi under the bed's fun. Lexi's continues her mean streak by dressing up as Jake's dad and pretending to be electrocuted for Halloween. It's very mean. Which is a turning point for Jake, because he does actually want to confront her, and he's just about to confront her properly when Chucky's about to try and kill her. So he jumps in and saves her instead, which again shows us that Jake's actually a good person. But of course, the episode ends with Chucky talking to him and saying that no, she deserves to die and you should man up and do this. And notably also promises that you'll never hit him again, because that's something I never mentioned, is that Chucky punched Jake. We didn't get to see the punch, it happens off camera, but Chucky gets mad at him halfway through the episode. And this was really weird, actually, that he comes down and what's his face, Logan and Bree see his black eye, and they just kind of like think it's a Halloween costume idea and go, oh, what are you supposed to be? But he just looks like he's wearing his normal clothes, he just has a black eye. But there's just no way that he was with anyone, because he's been in the house and he didn't have a black eye earlier, so they're confused as to exactly, but they just assume that it's a Halloween costume, and I'm like, why would you assume this is a costume idea? Oh, that eye looks real. Like, I don't know, I feel like a weird leap in logic to me. But I think what I like about the stuff with Chucky and Jake right now is that, and they sort of draw a direct comparison with his father, where when he promises never to punch him in the eye again, he said, Jake says, I've heard that before. And I kind of like this weird, horrible influence that Chucky's being, where it's kind of exploring the idea of trusting someone who is a bad influence, because his father was this really not great influence. And even his uncle, Logan, well, he's obviously clearly a much more stable guy, and is a lot better uh, mentally than his father was. He still has a problem in the sense that he's still kind of inflicting his vision for his son onto Junior, right? Junior still feels this pressure of trying to live up to him. So he's better than Jake's dad, but there's still a kind of a problem there with the influence of him and all that kind of stuff. And I think it's interesting that we see Lexi's parents in this episode. We see there's definitely a lot of that sort of cropping in. And even Devon, the fact that Devon's mother is the police officer who's investigating the crimes, and we see her interact with her son. It's very notable. The show's going out of its way to make sure that a lot of these main teens, we're seeing them interact with their parents, and we might get more of some of these other characters where we're not seeing as many of them. You know, like, we don't necessarily get a sense that the Detective Evans is necessarily inflicting like her views on her son, but then maybe we'll see something like that down the line, or we'll get a different take on it. Maybe she's a much healthier parent, and we'll get to see that too. But this idea that the show is really playing with influence, and Chucky being an influence on Jake and possibly Caroline, and comparing that to the parents and whatnot, is an interesting path to take. And it feels like after 2 episodes, even if there's still elements where, okay, there's a little bit of the teen drama to get through that's not as exciting, or the odd bit of bad acting here or there, it does kind of feel like Don Mancini does have something that he wants to say. There's something that he wants to explore with parents and adolescents. Obviously, Jake at the center of it. You know, we have this this queer experience growing up specifically, but I think all of the kids so far seem to have parental issues of some way. I mean, and some of them are fairly normal parental issues, but then you also have the fact that a lot of these families are pretty rich. You know, Junior's parents particularly are very well off. They have a giant foyer with the double staircase and everything else. But you know, even Lexi's parents seem pretty well off. She is particularly nasty to the poor kids by the sounds of it. So we're kind of getting different perspectives, and all of it seems to be circulating around the different influences that parents have on their kids and the pressures they put on their kids. And I'll be very fascinated to see that kind of maybe develop into a more central idea as it maybe clears up as we get more details and more parts of it. So that's good. That's good. The fact that I can say something like that about the show, which, you know, at face value, you could say, it's a bit of doll that kills people. It's good. There's a bit more meat to it than otherwise there would be. But, you know, it's early days yet. And I am excited for a bit more direct carnage where it's less about hiding and Chucky's a bit more active in front of more people. And we got some teases of that. You know, obviously he was happy to act out in front of the Caroline, the little girl, and he was happy to pretend to be a trick-or-treater with a mask on. But obviously there's more to go here. You know, I want to see Chucky interact with a lot of other characters. I did notice at least one of the adults, I won't say which one just in case you don't want me pointing this out, and it might mean nothing. Sometimes this is just a case of contracts and things, but I did notice that an actor was a guest star that I thought was a regular, and it made me go, oh, that probably means they die earlier rather than later. And it may not be true. It may just be a contract thing. It may just be a status thing, whatever, but worth mentioning just in case. So I you know what, I'm not far off 30 minutes on this review, and I'm surprised. I didn't think I was going to talk this long on the episode, which isn't a bad thing. I thought, 15 minutes for this would be completely fine, given, it's a 40-minute show without ads and whatever, but there has been some things to discuss and kind of talk about, so that's good, and hopefully that continues across the board. And as far as the influence thing goes as well, you also have the idea that just to go back to Junior a little bit, as much as I'm not really feeling his stuff yet, particularly from his perspective, because he's such like just a blank stare kind of character, there is kind of this thing where he's like trying to make out with Lexi, and she's been very critical and saying, "Oh, you're not doing anything properly," or whatever the lines of dialogue were, and he's like saying, "Well, just tell me what you want me to do," and she's like, "You're supposed to know what to do." I couldn't help but feel that was also a further kind of addition to what's going on with his father, and that he's used to being told exactly what's expected of him, and he can't necessarily think for himself. So if there's an arc for Junior, assuming he's going to survive, I'm glad that there's potential there for it to be more that he does think for himself. So hopefully he fleshes out more. I do hope he does. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Not bad. Still not perfect, but I'm definitely seeing the wheels starting to turn a little bit in terms of what the show might be. I just hope that it doesn't maybe linger too long by drawing things out. Obviously, the idea that Jake might actually be considering violence at Chucky's influence, obviously, it's an interesting place to go next episode, and I think because he's our main character and we want to like him, we hope that he's not going to go through with it, that he's going to make the right choice. But we're so early in the show, it feels weird to have Chucky turn on him so early. But you hope for the best. So there you go. That is episode 2 of Chucky. Let me know what you thought of the episode in the comments below. Like and subscribe and all that stuff. Get me on the Twitters at Wibble89. You can get Mailed Fuzz in general on Twitter at mailed_fuzz for channel updates. And of course, you can support everything we do simply by hitting the like button, subscribing, commenting, dinging the bell for notifications if you want to know when the new reviews go live. All of that helps, and all of it is completely free to do. If you want to do something that's a bit more than free, you can head over to patreon.com/mailfuzztv and support all the content for as little as $1 per month and get some bonuses for your trouble. So thank you very much for joining me. I always appreciate it. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?